What's up, all you lazy, entitled, basement-dwelling millennials, bootstrapping boomers, apathetic Xers, and goddamn Gen Z kids today? On the ballot today, we got ballot initiatives.
Wow. Such a good pun there to start us off.
Sorry, his title was Changing American Democracy, the People's Power. And I thought mine was more kitschy.
Wow. That's next time you can write the title.
A hard time. It's a good one.
It is a bit cheesy. It's a bit cheesy, but it is accurate.
It is. I went
And
cheesy the other
compelling.
way, though. You went cheesy serious. I went cheesy stupid, so.
That sort of feels like our relationship
It really
to
does.
some extent.
Uh-huh.
It works, though.
It does.
It works.
You need that yin and yang, that
That's right.
zing and zang.
That's right.
All right. So ballot initiatives. Don't tune away. We'll make it sexy. I promise. We'll put a bikini on it. You know, give it a Budweiser and a hamburger and make it. Oh yeah. So
We'll bring it back. We started off on a really strong note this time.
Kicking right into it. I'm in a mood today.
Yeah. I mean, it's been some time, and some things have happened.
Yeah.
In our lives, and mourn for you.
Yeah.
It sounds like there's
Yeah.
some weird things that have happened to you recently, but
I had an interesting experience with goats. That's all I'm gonna say.
yeah, in unfortunately not the fun way. If you know what I mean.
Yeah, is there a fun way?
Just ask every producer of a frat film in
That is true.
the mid 2000s.
Mm-hmm. You always have to have a goat in there somewhere.
Or sheep, I guess, is probably more accurate. But
no sheep, but definitely had goats running around the property. That's not the story of the podcast, though.
No.
So sorry, we gave you that teaser and not gonna follow up with it. But
today I wanted to start with election day for 2023. Obviously, we discussed a couple ballot measures, ballot initiatives that went up to vote. So yeah, what happened? Basically, looks like Virginia went a little bit blue wave in that. I hate that red wave, blue wave term.
Yeah.
It gives me the ick every time I say it or hear it. But Virginia did elect a Democratic majority to both the Congress and Senate for their state. Kentucky somehow got a Democratic governor. However, the state of Mississippi did reelect a Republican governor.
Who's? Do you have it on hand, or am I putting you on the spot to ask who the Kentucky governor is?
I don't know the names. All I know is that actually in Louisiana, there's a Republican governor who is now withholding infrastructure money from New Orleans area because they were refusing to prosecute or criminalize abortion, even though that's what the state had basically mandated. But the city itself and the mayor and whatever, they were not willing to do that. And so now the governor's holding those funds for like water infrastructure, sewage infrastructure hostage essentially until they capitulate to the abortion criminalization.
So it's kind of like what that dipshit Tommy Tuberville
right, yeah,
is doing with the military appointments.
Yeah,
It's a similar thing. Kentucky governor's Andy Beshear, and he's been the governor since 2019. So he won re-election.
Nice.
And actually, I do remember he like that's the thing with Mitch McConnell. Like why they won't put Mitch McConnell in the retirement home.
Oh, sure.
Is because if Mitch McConnell, permanently blue screens before before re-election, and they the governor gets to appoint who the senator is in the interim before the election, and
Doesn't go for like a special election.
No, it's a appointed senator until then the upcoming election.
The normal election cycle starts up. Interesting.
And And so obviously he wouldn't appoint a Republican because
Right,
he's a Democrat.
But now that he's the governor again for
Right.
presumably another 4 years,
Right.
is Mitch gonna make it in another
Right.
4 years?
And so like, and
Doesn't
I
seem like it.
highly doubt it. Well, and I don't know. I can't imagine. I don't know what the fuck's gonna happen. Are they putting Mitch up again for?
I feel like they are. I feel like they're putting Mitch up.
Is Mitch McConnell? Running for re-election? He's gonna
Probably hasn't announced yet.
serve term out. Yeah, at this point, it just says he's gonna serve his term out, and that's why he's serving his term out. And I know like the Kentucky legislature was trying to pass a law that violates Kentucky Constitution to force the governor to appoint somebody of the party of the sitting person.
Sure.
And that's not going to hold up in court, I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
It's interesting. But he's been governor of Kentucky since 2019, and
Nice.
it'd be interesting because if he does appoint somebody, then he got an incumbent running, and that's obviously an edge. Obviously, that's why the fuck Mitch McConnell is still there after all these years.
Right. Well, and he just does such a good job of being an obstructionist. He's basically like carved out that role in a way that did not exist until he decided to make it that way. So, hats off to him for being that way.
Yeah, I mean,
he's done something.
He has
Not
invented a
good
new
things.
kind of unproductive politics.
Right.
You know,
Yeah. If people complain about how Congress doesn't do anything, has a good deal to do with Mitch
basically
McConnell.
all Mitch McConnell. Like every time something doesn't happen, it's
Right.
just because Mitch McConnell is up there. Like, I don't think that we should be voting on this particular issue at the moment.
It's pretty good. It's pretty good, actually. So that's kind of the actual candidate elections, but then we have the ballot initiatives that were mostly good. So Ohio, obviously, enshrined abortion rights into their constitution.
And then the
they
Ohio Republicans are trying to unenshrine the enshrined abortion rights.
Yes, they are very much just very against
democracy.
the direct democracy.
Didn't he
that
literally
occurred.
come out and say, pure democracy is not the way that the country should be run?
Yeah.
You know, these people don't know what the fuck's good for them, and we are here to tell them. And,
Yeah, they know just enough to vote for you, but not enough to know anything about the actual policies.
I mean, honestly, the fact that he was elected kind of gives some credence to his point that maybe these people
Not
don't
in the
know.
way that he intended it to be. But that's a fair point. And I meant to have more in there about like Republicans basically try to take away some of the people's power to make.
Well, they
these
did a ballot
initiatives.
initiative to limit the power of ballot
Right.
initiatives.
They did,
remember,
they
which
did.
was hilarious. Like, hey guys, we're gonna do this ballot initiative to make it so you really can't do ballot in it. You need a super majority to win a ballot initiative,
Right,
and
even
people are like, why would we do that?
Yeah. Even though like there's like nationally like a less than 30% chance that any ballot initiative will get passed. So, or historically speaking, wise. So it's you got to take away people's power to make decisions, obviously, because then they might not side with your views. Apparently, in that
the unpopular shit you want to do isn't. It might not happen
it's a little bit more difficult.
It's
to
not
do
popular.
when people
and,
can fight back.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the things we're going to talk about. Is this is basically probably the biggest like secret weapon I want to say that like citizens have, generally speaking, against their state legislature in their fight against any sort of corporate influence and potentially moneyed influence, in that they can shape the way that the democracy actually functions if they can get a ballot measure passed. Like if you, we'll get into it later, but they enshrined abortion rights, Ohio did, and then they also legalized marijuana, which is awesome. We've talked a ton about how legalizing drugs and decriminalizing it just is the right thing to do.
And it's a no-brainer, just across the board.
Yeah,
like crime
across
goes
the
down
board.
when you do it.
Obviously, it'd be great. You legalize the crime,
Right? There's less crime to be done.
We've redefined it.
But I mean, just crime in general goes down, associated crime
Yeah,
with
yeah.
it. And then you get more revenue that
Yeah,
can pay for
obviously there's some
things
tax
like
revenue there that you're tapping into, which is something that most states desperately need these days.
absolutely, yeah.
Even if they are in a pretty good spot like Minnesota, I think we're still underspending our infrastructure for what we need to maintain our infrastructure.
Yeah.
Pretty large to a large extent. So like,
Minnesota has a constitutional requirement to have a balanced budget, though, which is why we are one of the top 10 contributor states to the country, because we are constitutionally required to do so. But it's cool. I mean, like, I think that that's a good thing. It'd be interesting to see all of these Republican states that are welfare states
Right,
always talking about balancing budgets.
yeah, exactly.
Um,
We need a balanced budget, and that's why we're going to hold the American, basically federal system hostage while we posture about and try to make political gains for no.
And while we balance the budget, we're going to do this by cutting taxes on the people who make the most money, because
Right.
That's how you balance a budget: is less money coming
bringing in less revenue.
Yeah.
In the long run, it's got to work. Even though the long run that's been since the 80s,
It's gonna trickle all over your face any minute, man. Just wait for it. It's gonna trickle all.
It's
It's gonna golden shower all over you. You're just
boy.
gonna be
Wow, we're really hitting all the high notes on this one today. But so that was Ohio. I was looking at the map, and I don't know if it's interesting or not. I thought it was a little bit interesting for the abortion initiative. It was very, very divided, even though the votes were pretty much the same for legalizing marijuana and abortion rights. But like the concentration of whether you were highly for it or against it was like really distinct in that a lot of the cities, there's like 3 or 4 major cities in Ohio somehow. And all the cities were very much for abortion rights, and all the more rural counties were very much not.
Which is just, I mean, I feel like that is literally, like, you go to New York and you get out in rural New York, or you go to California and you get out in rural California, and it's the same shit. It's the same shit here. Like,
Sure.
obviously,
Yeah,
you get in
even
rural
Minnesota.
Minnesota.
But I thought that in contrast to the legalization of marijuana bill or ballot initiative was that it was a little bit more spread out. Like there was much less. It was not as divisive. Apparently, more people in rural areas were in favor of legalizing marijuana, and it didn't have as much support in the cities. So like it was more dispersed, but overall the votes were still like 58% or 57% in favor of both. So it was funny that the numbers were the exact same, but the support was
the distribution was different.
Yeah.
Oh, hey, people on the farm need a cheap vacation, so
Hey, staycations are a real thing.
Yeah.
I love a staycation as much as anybody else. I mean,
So-
binging How to Train Your Dragon or all the Die Hard movies while getting drunk and playing some Civilization on your computers and whatever. It's a good time.
So now that the weed's legal, they can take a trip, never leave the farm. I see why they might want that. Plus, somebody's got to grow it, right?
That I don't know how much weed you're going to be able to grow in Ohio. But more power to you for doing that. Well, then moving past Ohio, we have Maine. There really wasn't that much going on with this election, as we stated in our previous election episode. This is an off year, but Maine did, and I told you I lied to you a couple weeks ago.
How dare you?
I counted my chickens and my hens
Before they hatched.
much too soon. Apparently the night, like a night or two after they voted, or maybe it was like later that night, I checked, and it was very much in favor of supporting the Pine Tree Power Initiative that would have basically collectivized the energy production in Maine. And then I checked like a week later, and it did not pass. It was like 66% fail.
Wow.
Which, I mean, that's what you get when you have $40 million spent on one side and like $1 million or $2 million spent in support of it. So like,
and all you got to say is socialism.
right. Yeah. I
Can't
don't
have
know
none of that socialism.
That's right. It's illegal. We've illegalized socialism according to our Congress. But they did on a lesser bill or lesser initiative. They did pass the right to repair for
Oh, that's awesome.
vehicles.
Mm-hmm.
So like Teslas and all those vehicles, then basically all those private shops that have the ability to repair cars. Kind of like for phones, like if your phone breaks, you sometimes are not allowed to fix it legally. But they made that so that the car manufacturer could not outlaw the private repair of that.
Yeah.
So
And it usually goes further than that too. Is it prevents them from
like not making parts available and stuff.
right, and not making like super specialized parts. You know, I know on like heavy equipment and stuff. What a lot of
Like John Deere it's like a big deal for John Deere stuff too, right?
yeah,
Farmers.
it's been huge for John Deere, and just like some of the stuff is you know, like curved windshields on heavy machinery. They don't need to be aerodynamic. They're going 15 miles an hour.
Right, and you're a giant machine. So
Yeah. So like, you know, flat glass, you can go anywhere and they can cut flat glass.
Sure.
You get curved glass, you have to order that from the manufacturer because
Right.
nobody else makes it, especially on more specialized stuff like that, where, you know, like windshields for cars, when you got millions and millions out there, a lot of glass companies will make aftermarket.
And those car companies are incentivized to make a standard for
Right.
because they're doing hundreds of thousands of windshields across different
Right.
platforms and different manufacturers. So like,
But yeah, so companies definitely do that. They try to make it difficult for people to repair the stuff themselves, and then when they do make it possible for things to be repaired themselves, they try to make it so the only place you can get parts is
the
from them
dealership or whatever, right?
And you know, dealer markups are just absolutely fucking asinine.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
you're getting John Deere, you pay because there's that green little fucking deer emblem on it, and
or yellow.
yeah. No, right to repair is awesome. You know, and it really helps low and middle income people a lot because
And small business.
and small business, huge for small business. So yeah,
So,
across the
that
board,
that was one good thing for Maine. Obviously, it sucks that they were not able to pass
the Pine Tree Power,
initiative. Like we stated, it would have been really awesome for the community to not have a profit margin tacked on top of their power bill, but did not go through.
No,
So
I think any geographic monopolies should never be privatized. It's insane to me that we can privatize geographic monopolies when you know, like, again, there's no inherent free market for a power company or a utility company, because you can't have every company build its own power lines, obviously.
No, yeah.
And so in that sense, you know, it's infrastructure. It's like highways and shit. Like, we shouldn't have private highways.
No.
We shouldn't have private power lines. We shouldn't have private power companies. So
Indeed.
yeah, it's unfortunate that didn't pass.
But so that's kind of it for what happened recently. We're gonna take a back on that magic school bus, go back blast in the past, all the way back to 1898. South Dakota, another western state, kind of like Wyoming, with was it voting? Yeah, women's suffrage. South Dakota was the first state to provide a popular initiative and referendum for enacting and rejecting legislation.
Oh shit, Sodak.
South Dakota did something right, just like Wyoming did. So basically, they can now do constitutional amendments approved. This is back 1898, and basically they have those two forms: initiatives and referendums. They first were utilized, however, in 1908. Basically, on the theory that since the legislature itself may not always, adequately represent them, which is something we're dealing with quite recently, the people should be able to pass laws that they desire and nullify laws that they oppose. So that's a constitutional amendment for South Dakota. So that's something really powerful that the citizens of South Dakota have. Surprisingly, Minnesota does not have any such constitutional amendment or constitutional provision to allow for initiatives or referendums or any sort of constitutional amendment process for citizens to propose. So I was doing some research on it, and apparently if Minnesota wanted to start doing this, we would need to do a constitutional amendment for the state.
And the state legislature would have to do that of their own volition. Then at that point, I would assume.
I would assume, but I think like you could probably organize based off of what other states generally require, and reasonably, then you could
Argue
bring
that there's a precedent for
right. You could bring that to the courts, or you could bring that even to hopefully somebody like Tim Walz, who's like who could potentially push that through, or just the legislature as a whole, and say, hey, this is what this generally was widely accepted across the nation to require constitutional amendments through initiatives, and we've meet these thresholds. These are all of our signatures. Like we want to do this, we want to make this happen. We would need to do that in order to just start the process. Currently, only localities are allowed to do ballot measures. There's no statewide initiatives in Minnesota, which I thought was disappointing. But they're not the only state. There's a lot of states actually don't allow this or don't have any ability to make this happen. It's probably about half. So it's interesting.
It is interesting, and it always amazes me how like behind Minnesota is on some of the progressive stuff. When I mean, we are the one of, if not the brightest blue beacon in the country. People always talk about like California and New York and stuff, but like we were the only one who didn't vote for Reagan that one time. Like we have been set as like who we are. Some of the most progressive politicians in our country's history have come out of this state.
Right, and yet we don't have this ability for our citizens. We are in some ways one of the most segregated states still today. So like
we had really restrictive blue laws regarding alcohol up until recently, and we still have some stupid laws regarding alcohol, but they're getting better. We just legalized recreational marijuana, which is a great step forward. But again, we were not paving the way on that or anything, and so
we do a lot of things right, but we, like you said, we do seem to be behind in a number of ways, and I think this is a big miss for us, and not because Minnesota is like an authoritarian state, and it's like actually a bad place. I think it's easily one of the best placed top 5 states
arguably,
to live in the whole country. But this is a way for citizens to take the power away from interest, from moneyed interest, corporations, super PACs. If we can define how our democracy is ran, then we have a say in how that that influence and that power can be pressed upon our legislation or representative legislation. So it's a really big thing that more states, including Minnesota, should be advocating for.
Well, wasn't taking ranked choice voting off of one of like the local things here recently?
That's a good point. In Minnetonka, they did not repeal ranked choice voting.
They did not repeal it. Okay, good.
So it is still their voting method.
And was that a ballot initiative?
That was a ballot initiative.
So we still have ballot initiatives, but it's just local, not statewide.
We don't have statewide abilities, which I don't know. It's not like the biggest thing, especially I don't think that like corporate capture is crazy, like terrible in Minnesota.
Right.
I think it's largely a national issue. When it, obviously like monopolies and large corporations affect things on a national scale, not just a statewide scale. So it's harder to tackle some of those issues statewide. But I don't know. It seems to be, at least to me, like the most direct way. Obviously, it's a direct democracy path that citizens have the ability to affect democracy in a way that we don't really have otherwise. All we can do is vote, which you're voting for
a person you hope does what you want them to do, or a person who does, most of the sort of the stuff that you want them to do, but not everything.
And that's just the stuff that they think that they should do. And if they don't have to listen to you necessarily, and
then on top of that, even if they do, you vote for that person, and even if they are 100% in line with what you want to happen, they've got to get everybody else. Well, the other representatives 100% in line with what they want to have, or in line enough to get shit passed, where, with ballot initiatives, you can just show up and be like, yes, we want this, or no, we don't, and you don't have to go through that whole stupid legislative, I shouldn't say stupid, but this whole, it feels pretty stupid most of the time these days, but this whole legislative process.
Well, and that's part of the quirks of ballot initiatives is there's no like federally mandated like standard.
Mm-hmm.
So some states require a ballot initiative to then get sent to the legislature, and then the legislature will like make a choice or not.
Vote on
and
it.
then if they don't like do anything with it, then it becomes a ballot measure. So it's like there's still ways that ballot initiatives can be I forget the term.
Undermined.
Yeah, basically tampered with on the legislative side of things in order for it to not reach citizens or for it to just not really
Be amended to the point where it doesn't represent initially what it did, or
which is
take
like
its
they
teeth
make
away.
rules against that. Like that's supposed to be like you can only adjust things that are in the like of the will of the initiative. You're supposed to further that will, but obviously that doesn't always happen. So going back a little bit, we also have early 1900s in California. California's done like the most ballot initiatives I think of any state ever.
Yeah.
And they basically started with their governor at the time, Hiram Johnson, basically started doing ballot initiatives to do a lot of things, including fund schools. They abolished the poll tax in California in like 1908 or 1916 or something like that. And another big thing was back then the Pacific Coast Railroad was huge, right?
Oh yeah, I mean
And
that was
so
the
they had
Amazon of its day.
yeah, right. They had the corporate power over the legislature, and so that was one of the things he ran on was we're going to do ballot initiatives and we're going to fight back against the Pacific Coast Railroad, and we're going to take back our legislature, and so that's what they did with a lot of stuff, and they fought back against the corporate power. It's
Fight the power, man.
it doesn't get more plain than that. It truly is the ability, gives the ability for citizens to fight back against the big power, big data, all the stuff that we talk about all the time, and how it's ruining our democracy. It's ruining the way that we do government. Those are some of the things that we can rein in, or at least mitigate the ways that they can influence our representatives.
And like going back even further, long before the United States and whatnot, Rome, and I think Greek, like Athens, Greece, they had literal direct democracies, and they did it a little bit differently. A lot of times it was just one of your citizen duties was to serve on the Senate and vote on things, and obviously it was like restricted to property owning, like upper echelon people, but like taking that down, it was still a direct democracy. Like these people were required to take part and required to know enough to take part in the process and vote on it. And obviously they didn't have like the internet and shit back then to to do direct ballot initiatives like this. But to say that direct democracy doesn't work, empires that have lasted far longer than we've existed, operated under a type of direct democracy system or something that, was more direct democracy than our representative democracy or constitutional republic, as some people like to fucking split hairs over. Which is the same goddamn thing. By the way, representative democracy, constitutional republic are the same thing.
Right. A republic is democracy based off of legislative or representatives. Yeah. So like, I don't know. What's the difference between that?
It's one of those things like all squares are a rectangle, but not all rectangles are a square. Like you can have different types of democracy. One of those types of democracy is a constitutional republic or a republic in general. Yeah. And I always wonder what people are trying to get at when they like make that point.
Yeah.
Like we're not a democracy, we're a republic. Like
I don't know. It's kind of like it gives me the same vibes as somebody saying like, "Oh, I'm not a communist, I'm a Marxist," or like I'm a Leninist, or that's not a real thing. But like or a Stalinist. Like
it doesn't give me those same vibes though. It gives me vibes of when you're arguing for more democratic power, like voting rights, and ballot initiatives and shit, and people who really want fascism but can't be like, yeah, I support fascism, are like, we're not a democracy, we're a republic. And like it's like because there's nowhere for that argument to go unless you're like, okay, so you support less power for citizens to make choices over the way that their countries run. Like, that's the only reason to
Right.
make that argument. You know, we're like,
True. Why do you care so much about the label
yeah,
if you're not having some sort of agenda behind
right.
why?
Where I feel like communist Marxist type thing is like you're trying to change like a branding thing maybe, or you
it's like
have
a
a
school
different
of thought, like it's a
Yeah.
slightly different interpretation of Marxism and communism.
Yeah.
So,
So like I feel like those people are trying to get hyper focused
Yeah.
on a point where these people are trying to brush a point under the rug to like cover up their real agenda, which is, you know, that mustache man back then had some good ideas, you know, about how the way things should go. I do think one person should make more decisions for my life and your life specifically.
Yeah.
Because I feel like he's going to make the good decisions for me. And I feel like you being allowed to make some decisions is making it harder for me to tell you what your good decisions for me that are going to affect you are going to be. So,
you know, obviously there's something to be said for just one guy making all the rules, and
Yeah.
he just gets shit done.
Absolutely,
You know?
you know?
Obviously,
We
he
didn't-
just
we didn't-
gets shit done by murdering millions of people because they're
they're the bad ones, you
Right.
know?
yeah. He just gets shit done. That's the kind of shit you get done.
Hey,
When
everybody
you're-
likes a clean house, you know? I don't know why the ethnic cleansing thing gets such a bad rap.
I know.
Just
it's-
cleaning stuff up,
right,
man.
You're just cleaning your house, right? That's,
Yeah.
that's what everybody says you need to do.
Yeah. And it's not like we fought a revolution over one person telling us what we could and couldn't
Right,
do.
massive oppression, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
That doesn't have anything to do with the founding of our country.
No, I also feel like we were like probably like one of the least oppressed people, and at the time, when we fought
yeah, we were basically, yeah, that's a whole nother topic. But yeah, I don't think we were like had minor tax brought upon
Yeah.
us. And,
Like, this is
people-
outrageous.
People are freaking out.
My tea is slightly more expensive.
Well,
Burn this shit down.
I mean, I could understand that because apparently the British tea tasted like dog crap, and they were like, "Our tea's way better." So, like, no, we're not going to buy your British tea. So, fuck you, fuck off. And that was part of it. But
Yeah, I get it, but you know,
that's a huge oppression.
like
you know?
looking at revolutions, you know, like the French and stuff, and they're like,
yeah.
just saying, there's been some other revolutions where it's like,
Indian
yeah, and then
independence, yeah.
you know, and then we're over here like taxing our tea is just a bridge too far, my
It's
friend.
one step. It's a straw on the camel's back. It's too much. Anyways,
Back to ballot initiatives.
right.
Told you we'd make this sexy.
That's right. We're bringing it back. So then some really cool initiatives that have passed recently is Alaska actually implemented ranked choice voting through a ballot initiative.
Oh shit.
And so that's how they do all their voting for federal representation, which led to Sarah Palin not getting a seat in the House.
No shit.
Yep. So basically, there was a vote. I think it was like 2018 or something like that. But basically, there was 3 candidates. There was 2 kind of on the Republican side, and then there was 1 Democrat.
What was she running for? Sorry, I didn't know she was running
I
for
think
shit
it
again.
was House representative seat.
So like, and this was in 2018. This was like recent. I like did not know Sarah Palin was like, I'm gonna do politics again. Like I thought,
she tried, and she
you know,
ran a couple times actually.
because you know she had the governor job where she could see Russia and
Yeah.
field dress a moose at the same time, and
Well,
then
to be fair, we all nobody else really cared about her after she fucking went off that after she lost her mind.
well, yeah, and then yeah, so she lost her mind, and then I saw her on Masked Singer at one point.
What the fuck? I knew I hated that show for.
So I see her on Masked Singer, and I'm like, so this is where like people go to die, right? This is like their last hurrah before fading into oblivion. I mean, Rudy Giuliani was on Masked Singer, which was hilarious. They like booed him off stage, like Ken Jeong or whatever,
Yeah,
you know,
Ken Jeong.
got up and like walked off the show and shit.
Yeah,
But whatever,
that
like
makes sense.
Sarah Palin was there. She got a lot less ire
Yeah.
from everybody because we'd kind of forgotten how shitty she
She's,
was.
Yeah.
And then so I was like, no, I'm like, okay, good. This is your last hurrah before you fade from our collective memory forever. And then she goes and runs for fucking
Yeah.
national representative again.
Yeah. So she ran. I think she actually ran twice or something like that. It was she tried to get back into the game, but yeah, like I said, there was 2 Republican candidates and 1 Democratic candidate, and so in the first round, the Democratic candidate got 40%, which is not enough to win,
Right.
in a ranked choice voting or a plurality or a preference voting. And then Sarah Palin got like 26 or like 30%.
Yeah.
And then the other Republican candidate got like 15%.
So there was 2 Republicans running for the same seat and 1 Democrat.
Yeah.
Huh.
But there's no primaries now with ranked choice voting. So that's why there was that. And so then they eliminated the extra Republican, as you do in ranked choice voting when you don't have over a majority. And so it just so happened that of his like 15-20% that he had garnered, like 12% went to the Democratic candidate. Yeah, and only like 8 to like 9% went to Sarah Palin.
That is so fucking cool, man.
A lot of people had him rated at 1, but then the Democratic candidate at 2, and not Sarah Palin. And so she got fucking pissed, and that was why there was like this huge push in saying that like Democrats are stealing elections through ranked choice voting and all this shit. And it's like, no, like very Republican states are doing this nationwide. In the state of Utah, it's huge for state representatives. It's like in like 10 districts have ranked choice voting now.
And Utah notoriously blue.
Yeah, exactly. Notoriously blue.
The Mormons are really progressive people, you know?
Yeah, I haven't heard of anything like LDR or like anything like that. But yeah, so in Alaska, they did that, and yeah, so there's a lot of benefits that happen from ranked choice voting through ballot initiative in Alaska.
That's cool as shit. And honestly, like the idea of getting rid of primaries is so cool to me.
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
I mean, like,
not only does it decrease the power that the GOP or the DNC has over any particular candidate, like we've seen time and time again with Bernie Sanders and with them just pushing Clinton and pushing Biden over any of the other candidates. Like it just negates their ability to make those kind of decisions for the people by not having a primary, like you're saying.
Yeah. So and then it also, I feel like, cuts down on the amount of campaigning to begin with, like, because if you've got to run through a whole primary campaign, that's, especially if you're an incumbent, that's still months and months and months that you are not doing your job because you're, if you're getting primaried as an incumbent to keep your place to run in the general. And then it's a bunch of a mudsling. I mean, you look at any primary, and they're just as much of dicks to the people in their own party they're running against as they are to their opponent.
If you've watched the third Republican debate that just happened, that was like the most bitch fest debate I think I've ever seen. They just could not get along on that stage.
But like all of that stuff, I think, does damage in the long term, because that's all this rhetoric and propaganda and bullshit that just gets recycled through the next election cycle and every election cycle after that.
It disincentivizes the extremes, and that's a huge thing. Is like, no longer will the person who says the thing the craziest thing the loudest, will they get the most airtime. Right. Now it's like, okay, actually, I think you're fucking nuts, and I would much rather vote for this guy who's just like, I don't think what you're saying is in reality, dude. Like, you're off the charts, crazy. This is a common sense thing that I think would help. Please put me as your first or second vote. If you don't want me as your first, please put me at your second in your rankings. Like, that's a pretty normal thing. That should be like,
and that's a huge point too, is that the things you need to do and say to win a primary is very different than the things you need to say and do to win a general, right? And the things you need to represent. And the problem is where you get, heavily set states, heavily red or heavily blue states, is you are pandering to the extremes of your party for the primary, right? Like, you need to get a rally. You need to rally enough people to get you the position to run for the general.
Yep.
which does not necessarily mean that that's the person who is going to be the most representative of the entire state. Because,
Right.
like,
You're not going to get the most voters, the most amount of voters. You're just going to get the loudest ones for you. But when you get to the general, guess what? You kind of need the most.
Right.
Most of the time, you need the most.
But unfortunately, where you have these states, and so in purple states, that kind of negate some of that. That's why you don't normally get the super crazies in the purple states. I don't know where Bobert fucking came from, but but in the solidly held states by either party, this is where you get the people who need to pander to their base, and then it doesn't matter because they've got that letter next to their name, and that's the way that their state's going to vote for them. And they are probably the worst person to represent the people because they literally pandered to a subsection of their party to make sure that they got their primary win. So, yeah, I'm all for it. Getting rid of ranked choice voting, if we can do that through ballot initiatives.
Yeah, and I think...
Or not getting rid of, getting ranked choice voting.
Yeah, and that's a huge thing. We've done it in, like, Minnetonka did it. Obviously, Alaska has done it. This is something that we could do as citizens in Minnesota. This is something we critique the Democratic Party for in this last... legislative sections for not doing anything to promote ranked choice voting other than like commission a study.
Right.
When it's like, if other states can do it,
we'll look into people who will look into looking into it.
Yeah, but if initiatives were, statewide, if they were allowed in Minnesota, then we could just start a petition and start that process, and we wouldn't need to wait for our representatives to do something like that.
Yeah.
Like, we don't have to campaign them to do a campaigning thing to get other people to do it. We can just campaign directly to people and have them be like, yeah, I do want a democracy that better represents me. So let's go for it.
Well, imagine if we did this on a national scale and all the shit that went to the Supreme Court for them to decide. Like, what if we just got rid of the fucking Supreme Court?
That's what this also does. As long as something is not deemed unconstitutional, it's another law. We can supersede basically the courts and having to wait for the court to decide on stuff. We can just make an initiative and we can do it. And unless it's deemed unconstitutional or deeming that it will not violate anybody's constitutional rights, that's it. There's no court ruling. We don't have to wait for a court to be like, oh, what are we gonna do? Is this legal or not? Like, we can just make the determination.
So like we could do that with like Roe v. Wade. Like you say like, all right, fine, you want to overturn it, you do a ballot initiative on the national level and be like, just like what Ohio did, just nationally, just be like, no, we want
it to be a constitutional amendment.
Yeah. Or we just want it to at least be a law that can't be overturned with anything other than a ballot initiative. And put it through, affirmative action, legal weed, legalization of marijuana, all that kind of stuff. Like,
I mean, I don't see why we can't have. I think that have a much more difficult chance of getting passed nationally speaking versus statewide. But maybe I'm wrong. I don't see a reason why we can't try. Like, I think it'd be a great.
If you put it on a on-year election ballot,
right?
I don't see why.
Well, and that's they do a lot of ballot initiatives on off years to sort of to get people like to the polls, and they make. And I have this in there a little bit later, but there's been cases where some parties have sort of like baked in a non-issue, but it sounds like a big issue, and you can guess which party might create a non-issue and make it an issue. The issue was like
pronouns.
It was the initiative was whether or not non-citizens can vote to make that illegal.
It's already is, buddy.
Yeah, that's been brought up, and like that they promoted that thing. It never got to the initiative state because it was not like doesn't qualify to be a ballot initiative because it's not. It's dumb. It's already illegal.
Dumb.
It's irrelevant.
It's like we need to take CRT out of kindergarten.
Right. Exactly. Something like that. They could bring a ballot initiative that says that. And that would bring people to the polls. They'd be like, "Oh yeah, that's terrible." And so like it's just it's sometimes, and it's as much as we can do good things with it, people can do bad things with it, and that's one of the things that they can do.
No, I would hope that as the stuff goes on, like obviously, you hope that your community, your citizens, by and large, are not dumb enough to believe stupid shit like that. I mean, again, those are the loudest people, so we hear them the most. We think it's a big thing. But I feel like by and large, people aren't that stupid. The majority,
and most Americans are like moderate generally on our scale, not on like a European scale, but like on American scale. Like most people do not believe in the most right wing or the most left wing things. So like, and those people are just not being represented right now at all in our democratic process. So if anything, like we just need initiatives and ballot initiatives to give a voice to people who are being left out.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's it. There's nothing more for democracy than that.
Yeah. So I mean, I guess aside from people abusing it and being like, we need to make CRT and sanctuary cities illegal, like when you don't have any sanctuary cities in your state, like that's something that Ron DeSantis ran on or like passed a bill, like we're outlawing sanctuary cities. It's like you don't have any. There's not one that you have, and and we're banning CRT from elementary school curriculums, and it's like that's not a thing that happens in any post-secondary or secondary school period, like nowhere, like it's not part of it at all. And and then he's like, well, but we also need to teach about how slavery wasn't that bad,
right?
There's some good things, like most of them had a place to live.
We gave them skills.
We gave them skills for the job market
that they could never get to because they're always slaves.
I mean, these are handy skills to do your daily slave work.
Exactly.
But like obviously that has some complications. But aside from that, that's pretty minor because they do that shit anyway with legislation and just campaign platforms. Like that's the shit they run on to get elected.
Right.
Is there anything else bad about it?
I mean, along those lines is as much as it can rein in corporate power, it also gives the ability for corporations to spend a lot of money.
That is true.
So because ballot measures, and this is something that the Supreme Court has ruled upon actually, is that corporations have a First Amendment right to spend money.
Citizens United.
Right, essentially. But even before Citizens United, they ruled that ballot measures, because they're not an actual person, right?
Right.
They're a law that's potentially going to be voted on.
Right.
It cannot be corruptible, and you cannot you cannot get favors by spending money supporting or opposing it. And so therefore there's no way to corrupt, and you can spend as much money as you want. Yep, there's almost no problem with that.
No, I can't see any flaw in that logic whatsoever.
Nope.
So yeah, aside from the fact that obviously corporations can spend tons of money on lobbying and propaganda and media presence to sway something, which is what I'm assuming happened with that Pine Tree Initiative.
Yeah, I mean,
in Maine,
you can't deny that $38 million to like $2 billion spent. Like, I wonder which side is going to get more support.
Right. Because you got to think the normal layman is not like and it's something that's hard. I think maybe probably for a lot of our listeners. All like 4 of you, and just kidding.
Right.
There is actually like we do appreciate all the support. You guys have been coming out way more than I expected for this, and it's awesome. But yeah, all of our listeners and like my fans on TikTok and stuff, and like you and I, and obviously our social bubble to a large extent is people who are a bit more engaged in just in the process of the world work. And governments and democracy and all that. So it's sometimes easy for people like us, I think, to forget that there's other people who don't give a shit about all of this boring stuff that we find interesting for some reason, right? It takes a special kind of broken brain to be like, this is what I really want to fucking read about today.
Right,
Like there's way more interesting shit out there.
Do I want to spend 4 hours watching people talk about ballot initiatives?
Right.
Which, by the way, when I was doing a bunch of research on YouTube, my favorite place to do research, there's like no information out there, man. Like there is like no documentaries. The thing that I could find the most was panels talking about it. So like there's like a Harvard law panel that has like 3 or 4 people that are like talking about it, which is like good stuff.
Yeah, but
like,
dry as fuck, I'm sure.
It's not the best, and it's muddled. Like in a conversation, it can be more difficult to find something that is like a lightning bolt type of like a story or something.
Yeah.
You know, you don't have a curated like somebody creating a content that is like moderately entertaining while still being factually like what we're trying to do,
Right,
what we're attempting to do. There was very little information about this stuff, and I had to like specify like California ballot measures, or it was difficult.
I think that that's an important thing, like why you and I work well together too on this kind of stuff, is because we both process information very differently.
Yeah.
Like that's how you consume your information and stuff like that. And like when you say it's hard to find stuff like that, like I like the driest text
Yeah.
that I can find. Like I don't want to read your fucking opinion. I don't want to hear your opinion. I do not want to have to listen to it. My phone should never have to have sound coming out of it. I feel like I hate the fact that it even has a speaker. Like why can it make noise? You know what I mean? And I like reading it. I'm like, I just want straight numbers. Like I can form my own opinion. That's what I'm here to do. And you like that kind of more structure. I don't know. I don't want to call it more structured, but like you like the media part of it. Like you like it.
Yeah, I like to find people that are able to present factual information in a moderately entertaining way.
Yep.
And mostly because like I don't know, it's kind of a little bit laziness, and that they've done a lot of the legwork in doing research and a little bit of fact checking, and so it's just easier for me to consume.
Absolutely.
That. And I did have to read a document about why specifically Minnesota does not have initiatives, and like how we would implement that, and how other states are doing it, and like the thresholds that states have to reach in order to like allow ballot measures to be like a thing. But yeah, I mean, to your point, I definitely prefer to kind of get the human element
absolutely
a little bit.
And there's nothing. I wasn't trying to like criticize you with that at all. I was just I was getting to the point that like we consume these things very differently, and lots of people consume things differently.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't like consuming this type of information because it's generally boring. Like even if you're watching it on YouTube, even if you can make it like, you know, a little bit entertaining or like whatnot, like the amount of legwork you have to do to find these videos to do this research is almost as much work as the research itself, right? Like
I still spend hours watching stuff. Sometimes it's useful, sometimes it's not. And
honestly, like going back to the laziness thing, I think that that's why I don't do that, is because I'm lazy, and because like I don't want to spend all of this time listening to something and I'm like, that was fucking useless. Like that did not. Where I'm like, I can scroll through, and that's why I like the really dry, straight to the point stuff, because I can scroll right to. I can see this because that's the amount of attention span that my ADD allows me to do this research. But for people like us, because that's what we find interesting, and this is the way that we consume this kind of stuff, for a lot of other people, they don't fucking they don't care. And as they, which is fine. Like there's nothing wrong with that. You should not. You probably should not be as unhealthily obsessed with this kind of shit as we are.
Yes, I would not recommend it.
No, the world is always ending, guys, and we always know about it and have strong opinions.
It's never going the right direction.
No, never. There's never like, yeah, man, I feel good about the state of things. It's never a situation.
I mean, we get a couple wins here and there, just like we said earlier. But for the most part,
it's just like that sprinkle on the shit sandwich. It's like, ooh, there was some sweetness to
we're
this.
Just like always watching for stuff to go wrong. Unfortunately, because we never expect it to go the way that we want it to.
But for the people that don't have our mental derangements,
brain rot,
right? They don't. When they see the stuff that people are spending money on to push these types of narratives for or against ballot initiatives or legislation or campaigns. Like that's what you hear. So like, as much as I get frustrated when people bring up shit about like CRT or litter boxes in schools and like shit like this, where it's like for me, it's like too fucking just 2 microseconds of critical thinking,
Right.
and I'm like, this is the
Just,
dumbest.
Just do one Google search.
No, yeah, like you don't even have to do that most of the time. Just 2 fucking microseconds of critical thinking. But I'm so invested in it.
Yeah.
And so for me, I'm like, how are you this dumb? But then I've got to take a step back and realize that, like, all right, there's lots of things in these people's lives that when they started to explain it to me, they would probably think the same thing about me because
Right.
I'm not that invested in it.
Yeah.
And so that's really where that amount of money.
Well, right, and that's money that's being sent to like attempt to put an idea into your head,
Mhm.
right? So like it's not crazy to understand how does it get there,
Right.
because people spend
Mhm.
millions and billions of dollars trying to get it there.
Yep.
So like that's a really good point in that. It's like how do you not have it? How do some people not have it get there? Like clearly, like they've studied the human mind and human psychology, and like what is the best way that we can get this message to some people that have this sort of like inert bias or like inert like just leaning in some direction. Like they're already sort of going to be leaning that direction. How do we bring that out?
And
So,
there's people that's their entire. In fact, when I was in college, because I have a psychology degree, right?
I'm sorry.
And it's one of my degrees. I got a business degree too. I say one of my degrees. I got them at the same time. It's a double major. It's not that impressive by any means, but like
Still impressive.
yeah, I really liked psychology going into it. That's why I'm like, hey, this is a good idea. And then like halfway through, I'm like, this was not a good idea. I should add something that might be of some use to me at some point. So that's why I added business. But like, I grasped psychology pretty well, and I really like debate, and I always really enjoyed like trying to win a debate on something that I didn't truly believe. Like I was like that was a challenge to me that I enjoyed because again, I'm mentally deranged, right? And I've grown past that. That was a time.
I don't have that. We don't have those good discussions.
No,
really.
not at all. But I was definitely always a devil's advocate type of person.
Yeah, I feel that.
And I think that that's important too, like, because if you can't honestly try to look at something from somebody else's perspective and give it, like see where it's coming from, whether you believe it or not, you can't ever have a valid opinion on that topic. That's what I believe. So I think I grew from that. Well, I think that there was a time that I was probably a little insufferable about it. But I do think I grew from that.
And that's why I watch Fox News so much.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a good point.
I mean, I don't watch Fox News. I watch people talk about it, and I sometimes watch clips, but like I purposefully do that because it's good to know where everybody's coming from.
Absolutely.
It's good to see what they're saying.
Honestly, I mean, it's why I always read the Wall Street Journal articles. I try to go.
Those are pretty rough.
Yeah. Well,
me.
now they've gotten, since Rupert bought him out. Since
did he actually get? Is that why they've been so bad?
That's why they got bad.
Fucking Rupert Murdoch, man.
But like before that, it was like that was one of the few, like it was a conservative viewpoint that was still based in real journalism and fact. I was like, and then The Economist, so I'd read articles from them. I'm like, this is coming from a perspective I probably wouldn't come from.
Right.
And I want that perspective. It's hard to find that these days, where it's like an honest perspective.
Right. You get a very slanted set of facts, and the perspective is generally not holistic in any manner.
No, not at all. But the point I was getting at with that was, at a time, I was like, you know what? Being a lobbyist back when I was in that day and age, was like, that'd be kind of a cool job, because I could get paid.
You get paid to dispute bullshit for anybody who pay you money.
Right, exactly. And try to like convince people, because I always thought it was like cool. I was like, if I can take a concept that is ridiculous and make people believe it, I got a sense of superiority from that for a while. Like, I am clearly better than you in every way.
I have mystical powers.
I've grown from that, obviously, and part of it is just because I'm lazy, and I'm like, it's hard to come up with your own opinion.
You became an adult and had to work a job, and you're like, fuck that, man.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a lot of work. Like,
I came up with my own opinion. I put a lot of work into coming up with my own opinion. I'm not going to come up with somebody else's opinion now for them too anymore. Yeah. But there is people to this day that do that for a living.
Oh my God, it's a huge industry.
It's a huge industry, and I probably should have done it. I'd be a millionaire, and all of you would hate me, but I would cry into my $100 bills and go to sleep in my multi-million-dollar house, right? But I apparently had a soul and a stupid conscience that I couldn't get rid of.
Those things tend to get in the way.
It's fucking annoying. How do you
for people?
So yeah, they put that kind of effort into influencing the mind of people who don't care that much.
Right. And that's why I actually, in my research, I found that generally speaking, not only like 30 in California, 35% of initiatives that made it to ballots were passed.
Yep.
So that means 65% were no's.
Right.
And apparently, just psychologically, it's easier to get a no vote because, generally speaking, people haven't heard of an issue. And the more they hear about an issue, there's more opportunity for somebody to say something that they don't like.
Right.
Which means that, like, as you educate people, like you're probably not gonna hit every neuron in the right way. And like, as much as you want to educate people to get people to vote for you, you generally also create people who want to vote against you because of that education. And so it just becomes more difficult. And over time, like, the movements start to lose steam. And so that no vote is powerful.
And on top of that, I mean, the whole basis of conservatism is the devil you know, right? Like, I mean, like that's
why try something new that could actually help?
Right. But it might suck now, but it could suck worse. And that's a comfort zone for a lot of people, right?
Yeah,
I mean, so like they don't it's a lot easier because now not only do you need people understand how their world works right now. Now you need to explain to them how this could
in their mind semi-decently, right? Like, why do I need to change this? Well, it's probably because you're a white straight person who has never had that much diversity or difficulties in their life. Other than like, I have to work a job that sucks. Welcome to like 50% of America.
Nope. And if the majority, because we are the majority still, even though, great replacement theory coming in and all that
by
shit.
Like, what is it, like 2050, where white people set to not be the majority or not like a plurality anymore. It's supposed to be less than 50% of the United States.
So when you get people who are like, I know this works for me. I can survive in this situation. And if we change that, now you've got to educate somebody to be like, this is the change we're trying to do.
Right.
This is how it will or won't affect your life.
Right.
This is why it's good. These are a lot of things that you need to like keep people's attention for. And you think about like the TikTok algorithm. If you don't catch them in that 5 seconds and get them hooked and really sell them something, they're not going to stick around for it.
Yeah.
They're going to be like, no, I'm good with what I got right now. And that no vote comes really easy, where and maybe that's what we need to start doing, is making the no votes the shit that we want to happen. Like,
no, we can't do the thing that we say sucks.
Yeah, exactly. It's
I won't do it. I'll never write a ballot measure in my day that's like purposefully making the question to be a no to do the thing.
Do
that
it
I
all
want
the
to do.
time.
I know. I think it's horrendous. Anybody who does that is just it's misleading at best.
Oh, it's horrible. But if you can't beat them, join them.
No, don't join them. All right.
No, I do agree with you on that. By the way,
but last thing here is something that I think you'll find very interesting.
Yeah.
So in Michigan, they had an initiative that appointed an independent citizen redistricting commission. You might guess in an effort to reduce the levels of gerrymandering in Michigan. And it did end up passing. And so supposedly, according to them, they say that the levels of gerrymandering have dropped a lot.
I mean, if you look at the ways that Michigan has
voting recently, right?
I'd say that there is at least some circumstantial evidence to suggest that did something. I haven't looked at any of the actual numbers, but just from my knowledge of how Michigan used to vote, how they're voting now.
Yeah, but that's another thing that we could be pushing for in including ranked choice voting is this independent citizen commission for redistricting eliminates that direct ability for corporations to buy power, and like, you no longer have the ability, if I just get enough people who say the thing that I want them to say, who will do the thing I want them to do, and by just pay for their campaigns, then they'll try to keep themselves in power. So like by doing something like that, you can reduce gerrymandering. Wisconsin could take a really good lesson from that. Like, it's a way to give back a form of democracy, but instead of making it difficult to have like a true like representative government, we can bring that representative government back
Absolutely.
in a way that actually represents the people instead of a way that it's been bastardized in our current political situation. So there's a lot of things that initiatives can do for a country, statewide, nationwide. We just have to make it happen.
Well, and getting money out of politics, I think we
Right.
could use ballot initiatives to work on limiting how money can affect politics.
I don't see why you couldn't do that. Why you couldn't have an initiative, at least statewide, say like, hey, like you can't spend over X dollars for if you're running for X seat. Like that's the max.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's no reason why you couldn't do that.
Oh, I think that there's a lot of opportunities here that again, it's not a sexy topic, and I hope we've made it sexy for you people. Sexy-ish, you know. Got that skimpy bikini on it and everything, but it's a banana hammock, let's be real. But I think that this is important, and I think that,
important.
I think it makes democracy itself sexier because it's like, hey, now you get to go vote on the issue you want. You don't get to campaign for, the legalized weed now party and hope that they win some seat or some shit that they're never going to win, and then hope that they actually can get all of their measures through to do this.
Yeah.
Like, you can just be up there and be like, this is what I want done. I get to campaign for this specific ballot measure that means something to me. I get to go vote on it. And, my fingerprints are on that legislation specifically, and that affects the way I live. And that
a lot of these initiatives, like they take responses from their citizenship and like they ask citizens to have a voice and to craft it and to help like form the language and form the way that like this works. Like the citizen redistricting stuff in Michigan, like they had like one side that was like a constitutional lawyers that were like writing how do you do the stuff that we're trying to do, and then the citizens were like, well, why don't we have a citizenship that's based off of like a percentage of population, and each portion of the population gets like a person. So there's actually like 16 people on this commission, and it's supposed to attempt to more accurately represent different ethnicities, educational backgrounds, and like genders for the state of Michigan. Like it's supposed to like extrapolate the demographics of Michigan.
Dude, that's
into
awesome.
That commission. Like that's what we're trying to do with a representative democracy, right? That's like the best form of representative democracy is one that most accurately represents the demographics of your populace.
Yeah.
And that's what
You mean the demographics of our populace isn't like 90% old white dudes?
that are all like lawyers or like businessmen. No, I know. It's a crazy thing to think that that's not the case.
I just thought I'd never met any of them personally because they were all in Washington representing us because that's where they.
Yeah. I mean, that's where they live and that's where they do all their stuff. Yeah. You know what? I had not thought of that. You might be right, actually. My whole like way of thinking about all this stuff is completely blown now.
It's just they're there. They're really part of our
They're
society.
all
They're just
there.
all in Washington,
They're all
representing the majority of people that are in Washington.
Right.
Yeah, it's you see, it all makes sense. You just got to go back to the numbers, man.
What were we doing this whole time?
Oh, no. Yeah, I see.
All right. Well, I mean, I feel like I've been on my soapbox here for ballot initiatives long enough, and hopefully our viewers and listeners learned something.
Yeah,
and,
hopefully made it sexier than ranked choice voting. Hopefully you guys stuck with us for this. Again, we appreciate the hell.
And we hope that if you live in a state that has ballot initiatives, like take the reins. Like this Michigan one, it started apparently with this woman. I think she's in college or whatever. She made a Facebook post about like, gerrymandering sucks in Michigan. What should we do about it? Like it literally started from a Facebook like post.
Fucking right. Slipped by Zucky and everything and just turned into a whole
and, like people like were like, yeah, and so like they create like a website and like it all can start like from nothing. So like just try
and
start
think
an
about
initiative.
it. Think about it in states where you are really handicapped but have this, because I think Florida has ballot initiatives because I'm pretty sure that's how they got felons to restore their voting rights.
Sure.
Ohio obviously has them, and like we think, Ohio's the Florida of the Midwest, and they're not really part of the Midwest. You fuckers, you border West Virginia and Kentucky and shit. You're not Midwest, but anyway, it's a different topic. Florida's the Florida of Florida and the world, and you guys are fucked in a lot of ways, but you got ballot initiatives. You can get out here and you can make differences even when the cards are stacked against you.
Right. Clearly, you guys have been able to do some amazing stuff with the initiatives that have passed and not passed. So, like, you guys are doing some really good work.
Yeah. Utah apparently has this stuff, right? Like,
Utah's doing
Alaska's
some
got
really
it.
good stuff.
Like,
Alaska, yeah.
Like, there's places where it might feel hopeless because things are gerrymandered or because the populations aren't as accurately represented as they should be. This is a way to get better, more accurate representation, get the legislation that you want put out there. And if nothing else, it makes it very apparent what people are looking for, what they want in their representatives, and it gets a lot of times it gets national attention.
Right. But like I said, this is a way for Americans to change democracy as we know it, and this is your people power. Like this is everyday people's ability to make change. So,
absolutely. Well, once again, guys, we appreciate the hell out of everybody who stuck with us this far, and we appreciate you keep coming back every week. We love you. Check us out. Let Them Eat Toast and Off Your Wagon on all the socials, especially TikTok, Instagram. All that stuff. We are not on Twitter because, fuck that, or X now. But check all that stuff out. Check out offyourwagon.com because we got merch both for my TikTok channel, but also for the podcast now that Taylor's wife has been designing and putting out. She's been managing the whole website. She's done a great job.
Got some koozies. We got some shirts. We got some stickers.
All kinds of badass stuff with our logo. Actually, Taylor designed one of our logos for the podcast. Yep. Yeah, and it's a fun one. So get on there, check that stuff out. Every dime you guys spend on this stuff helps us. Not only financially, because obviously we're in a studio, we're helping my buddy out, trying to help out local small business entrepreneur stuff. So we're paying for this space.
Yep.
So that helps us out that way. But also, when you guys buy stuff, it lets us know you like us, and it makes us feel better about what we're doing. That's some of that direct feedback, especially with the podcast thing. It's not as direct as like TikTok and stuff where we get the instant comments and that kind of stuff.
We don't get any of that.
No.
There's no comment sections.
It's just YouTube. You guys can go comment. You guys can watch these episodes on YouTube. You can actually see our faces and shit,
right?
Which may be a bad thing. I don't know.
It might not be to your benefit, but
you can do that. And then you can comment there. You can comment on the TikTok channel. Taylor loves reading the comments and everything, and I try to get in there every once in a while in between all the other fucking comments I got to read, which again, love you people. Sounds mean. I absolutely love it all. I really genuinely do.
Takes time.
It does. It just takes time. And so we appreciate you guys, all your support in every way, whether that's watching, whether that's buying merch, whether that's commenting and sharing your experiences, the stuff you want to hear us talk about. We appreciate it all. So check us out. Thank you for watching. We will see you next week.
That's right. Take care.